Hello and welcome to 18 WJTS in.form. Tammy Lampert is our guest, and Tammy's going to talk with us about SWICACC, which is SWICACC something, something, something. And that may seem, wow, that's pretty big, that's pretty confusing. And that's the whole point of doing this show today, Tammy. First of all, what is SWICACC, which is SWICACC?
So SWICACC stands for the Southwestern Indiana Child Advocacy Center Coalition. And so we, as a nonprofit organization, we provide forensic interview services and child advocacy center services for children that are in Crawford, Daviess, Dubois, Martin, Orange, Perry, and Spencer counties.
So you're doing some pretty tough emotional work.
We do. We have some tough cases that come through.
Now, let me ask you, you're a nonprofit group, but are you a federal agency? Are you mandated by the government, or you can?
We're a 501c3 organization. The organization was formed in 2009 by law enforcement and prosecutors in the area that realized that our children were missing out on having a child advocacy center in their community. And so they came together and formed the organization back in 2009.
And you use the word center, so you physically have a building.
We have 4 forensic interview sites throughout the 7
interview sites. Okay.
Yeah, throughout the 7 counties.
Okay. Now, I'm aware of CASA, the Coalition, or Child Advocacy, and that's another one.
Court-appointed special advocate.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
How are you different, or do you work with them?
I love CASA. It's a great program. And so to kind of put it into perspective, if there's an outcry that a child's being abused or neglected, then that report would go to Department of Child Services and or law enforcement, and then they would contact the Southwestern Indiana Child Advocacy Center,
which is your group,
which is us, and we are that neutral fact-finding party that does the interview for them, which is part of their investigation and considered evidence for their investigation. And then if that child makes the outcry and does disclose, and then the court finds them to be a child in need of services, then a CASA representative can be appointed for that child to see them through the rest of that process to make sure that they're in a safe place and that they're getting the services they need.
Are you dealing then with child abuse only?
It's child abuse, neglect, and when I say child abuse, that's physical abuse, sexual abuse, neglect. We do a lot of interviews if a child has witnessed a crime of anything, so we do interviews on those kinds of things.
Okay. Now, you're needing help for people to identify situations. How does that work?
Well, and we're so fortunate. We have so many resources. I think people just don't know about the resources. For example, if you would Google search Indiana Department of Child Services Abuse Hotline, it'll tell you that the abuse hotline is 800-800-5556, okay? And then there's a link where you can go and you can learn more about the signs and symptoms of child abuse or different policies, and just there's so much helpful information out there. I think people just don't know where to look for it at. And so what I want to advocate for today is just to make sure everybody knows that if anyone has reason to believe that a child is a victim of abuse or neglect, that everyone in the state of Indiana is required to report that by law. And so you would report that to the hotline number, which is the 800-800-5556. Okay. I do have that memorized.
Okay, good.
And then that way, you know, the team can do their investigation, the child can be talked to, and if something is going on, they can disclose about that. The team can make sure to keep them safe, and they can start that healing process.
So every citizen in Indiana is by law
required
to, if you see something, you need to make a contact?
Indiana is a mandatory reporting state, which is awesome, really.
Is it an anonymous phone call then?
You can call in and you can leave your name and your phone number and your contact information, or if you're nervous about that for some reason, you can report anonymously. Okay,
because I would imagine sometimes people are at that fine line, you know, like, well, is that child being spanked because they're being disciplined, or is that child being spanked as abuse? Or should that child even be spanked? I'm sure that can be confusing for people.
It can be confusing, and I mean, in the state of Indiana, you know, spanking, it's tough to define all that, because there's a big difference in spanking your child for discipline and then excessive force, to where there's an item used, or, you know, there's marks or bruises and things like that.
Okay, so all of us, everybody viewing, if we see something and we're in the store and we notice something that we are concerned about, or we overhear something, we are responsible to make a phone call to this number.
To this number, the 800-800-5556.
Okay, and then it will be investigated, and that's where you come in.
Yes.
So they're calling this number. They're not calling your office.
No, they're not calling our office. That actually goes to the Department of Child Services.
Okay.
When I talk to teachers, first responders to child abuse, youth workers and stuff, I always tell them to dual report, to where they would call the hotline number, but they would also call the local law enforcement agency. And that way the team is made aware at the very onset of the investigation to keep everybody on the same page. And it's also to where, each agency has different policies and procedures they have to abide by also. And so that way it gives special assurance that the child's going to be looked into to make sure the child is safe.
The number one priority is the safety of the child.
That is the number one priority. Our organization runs off of the child first principle, to where the best interest of the child is always our goal. That's what we always have in mind with everything we do.
Now, it's unfortunate that you even have to exist, but you do. And
We
thank
do.
goodness you do. So you're like the go-between, I guess, between law enforcement and then to where they're going to the courts? Is that kind of
that would
the right
be-
way to look
that
at it?
would be an
Because
okay way to
you
look at it.
investigate whether there really is anything going on.
We do the forensic interview, which is a neutral fact-finding interview, to where we ask a lot of questions, a lot of detail, and then we also, as our job, we also look into alternative hypothesis to make sure, what we're being told adds up and it can be corroborated with the investigation.
Okay. Because it's tough just talking to kids.
It can be.
Yeah.
It can be. Each
Right.
kid's different, so
Right.
yeah.
Is it specially trained people who do the interviews?
Yes,
Okay.
everyone that does the forensic interview has to be trained. We are trained in Child First, which is a national protocol through Gunderson National Child Protection Training Center. So that is where we are all trained through their protocol.
Now, you're a nonprofit group, so
Mm-hmm.
you're not associated with any agency to where you're getting money. You are needing money yourself.
We do. We operate off of 2 main grants, and then we also do apply for like local grants if we need equipment, if something goes out with our camera system or our software or anything like that. And then we, there's certain things you can't spend your grant money on.
Okay.
For example, coloring books and crayons for the kids, or snacks and water for whenever the family and the kids are there or the team is there, things like that. So we're always, accepting donations. We provide training for the teams also. Just last week we had in a national trainer, Jim Sears, which was also referred to us by the National Training Center. And he came in and trained our team members too. So we always try to do that at least once a year so that our team can keep abreast of the ever evolving changes, not in just the laws, but in best practices and things like that. And so with that, we might get part of that money part of the grant money might cover that, but it may not cover all of it. And so that's what our donations would go to.
So it's a great way for somebody to make a donation is to your organization, or to maybe bequeath it. It would be another way to make sure that you're always getting that money, because you're needing that funding.
And and even just to welcome volunteers. I mean, we are always looking for community board members so that they can bring in that insight from the community and whatever their expertise might be. And maybe it's in marketing, maybe it's in finance, things like that. And it brings a whole different skill set to our board. And so, I mean, there's many different ways that you could reach out and volunteer or donate. We have several groups that it's cute, it's a ladies group, and maybe once every 3 months or so, they'll take up a collection of crayons and coloring books and snacks and Kool-Aid and things like that. And then, so that's another way to donate. It doesn't necessarily always have to be the cash donation. It can be different items for our centers.
So you have 4 centers.
We have 4 centers.
And these are centers that they're not overnight facilities. It's mostly offices or interview rooms.
So they're all 4 very different. For example, all of them have some of the basic key components of, we have a waiting room area for the family, because while the child is going through the interview in a separate room, then the family waits in the waiting area, and Crisis Connection, our victims advocacy agency, they're out there with the family, with the non-offending caregiver, to provide them with support and services also. And then we have a team room. That's where law enforcement, Department of Child Services, prosecutor, that's where the team sits, and they're able to watch and listen to the interview live, so that if they have any questions or they need clarification on something, when the interviewer takes a break, they can relay that, and the interviewer's in the other room with the child, and when that break happens, then the interviewer can go back in, and the child doesn't have to talk to all of those different disciplines and answer all those questions just over and over again.
So that is the facilities. That's why you have
That's
different
why we have
facilities.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. And so each of those 4 sites have those 3 rooms for sure. Some of them may have a couple extra rooms where it's storage or something like that. One of our sites, those are the 3 rooms that we have, and that's it. So it's one of our smaller sites. But that is our basic setup.
Sounds like, I don't want to say the word interesting is not right. It's heartfelt giving that you folks are doing to help kids like this.
I'm very passionate about a lot of different organizations and the good that they do. I love CASA, I love Crisis Connection. Prior to this position, I worked at Community Corrections. And so I really value all the good that the different agencies can do. But in seeing what I've seen in the past, what we do, if we are able to provide comfort to that child where they feel that they are able to disclose of the abuse that happened to them, and the team is able to investigate, keep that child safe, and then have that child go into counseling and services, I just see the benefit for them in the future, to where they can actually start that healing process at this point. Another thing that's great about what we do is if we do have a child that discloses, majority of the time the perpetrator has already perped on other victims and will continue to perp on victims in the future. So if that child is able to disclose and that perpetrator is able to be held accountable and convicted, we are protecting future victims also.
You're stopping that cycle right there.
Yeah.
All right, well, we're going to have you come back because there's so much to talk about. Is there anything, though, that you'd like to add for this, other than you really want to stress that everybody's responsible for, if you see something, take action?
Absolutely. Everybody's responsible. Take action. And that doesn't mean you have to have proof that it happened. If you have a suspicion that a child is in danger and not safe, being abused, report it. Let the team do their job and make sure that the child is safe. We have a website that people can find more information on, and that is www.swicacc.com. And so if we have like events in the fall, we have a 5K that we do. That's our big fundraiser. Last year, We'll Read and Sing for Food did a show for the organization, which was awesome. So we have a lot of information on that website too of different events coming up. I think there's like a contact link if anybody wants to email me and learn more about the organization, or if they're interested in being a volunteer or a board member or making a donation. We had a youth group last year that made goodie bags, and they had a book, crayons, coloring book, and Play-Doh in it. And so we're able to hand those out, because sometimes when the kids come to our place, the abuse is happening in their home, and they're not going back home. They're going to a foster home. And so they have nothing that is theirs. And these little gift bags that the youth group made, that's theirs. That's something they get to take with them when they leave. And so just the littlest things like that make a very big difference.
So now, hopefully, when people see the name SWICACC, SWICACC, and I have to look at that to remember that, you won't be put off or be thinking that's too big for me to deal. It's real simple. You're a person. This is who you put contact with.
Yes.
So it's an organization that exists for the good of kids.
Absolutely.
All right, Tammy, we're going to have you back.
All right.
All right.
I look forward to it.
Our guest has been Tammy Lampert. She is the director of SWICACC, the Southwest Indiana Child Advocacy
Center
Coalition. See, I can't just remember SWICACC, but be aware of the good work that they do. Hopefully, you'll never have to make the phone call to put you to work. And someday it'd be nice if you didn't have this job, because everything is peaches and cream. But it's not always going to work out that way. And thank goodness you do the work that you do.
Thank you,
Tammy. Thank you for being our guest. Thank you for watching WJTS. We're local people watching local people.